Okay, so everyone seems to be distracted, which is good. I can film something. So I finally found a psychologist who would see me in person. We're still in lockdown here in Sydney, so yeah, the psychiatrist, I rang them and they're like, no, and there's no plans to bring back face to face, it's all telehealth. I'm like, great. So yeah, I went on a database. I went on the psychiatrist database and also the psychologist database. The psychiatrist database was just really hard to use. It's really hard to search by issue. Yeah, I struggled with it, especially to find someone in my 5 kilometer radius that I can travel. But the psychologist database was much easier to navigate. So I was like, okay, my GP wants me to see a psychiatrist because she thinks that my issues are more that sort of a thing. But I can't take medication, so does it matter which one I see? Probably not. So I thought, I'll try the psychologists. I sent off emails to two of them. One of them's like, nah. The other one's like, yeah, sure, you're fully vaccinated, you're wearing masks, so that's all good. And so, yeah, I found a psychologist to see, and I had my first session yesterday. And yeah, it's always hard to know how things are gonna be just from one session. I've seen a few psychologists and psychiatrists over the years, and the first session's always like a sort of getting to know you kind of thing and what are your issues. So you don't really do much therapy in the first session, like therapy. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see in the next session, like when we make a plan of, what we're gonna try and do, and then, where we go from there, whether or not it's going to help me. But yeah, I'm trying the thing. And yeah, well, so there's some positive things, and I'm going to have to just be looking at my little Facebook post because I'm already like, I can't believe it was yesterday. My sense of time is all over the place. I'm getting a bit hot. Let me just turn off my fan, heater fan, Dyson thingy. Yeah, no, my sense of time. And like today, this morning, I did some of my work from home job, but then I just sort of turned into a mush and was on Neopets and, with the YouTube going on the side. And then there was a period where I was just sitting around doing nothing much at all. And then I was trying to type up some of my old poetry because it's taken me so long to get book 6 done. But hey, a little bit at a time. Oh god, and then like I'm getting close to finishing typing them up, but then I'll have to proofread them and format it and all that. And I'm just like, I really can't care at the moment. This is one of my problems. Like, I'm just so detached from everything. I have, like, how do I motivate myself is really difficult. And so, yeah, I need the therapy. I've got so much going on. Anyway, so, about yesterday's session. Well, what have I said? So it's hard to know from the first session what it's going to be like, but there were some positive signs. So, you know, the way that I think, and I think deeply about stuff, and, like I've been through this enough to have figured out certain things about myself. And so she sort of like recognized that instead of, thinking I'm coming from a zero base. No, I've actually had a lot of thought about things, and, it probably helps that my GP wrote on the referral thing that I'm highly intelligent, which, like, I'm good at maths and science, but look at my life. If I'm so smart, why can't I fucking get on with my life? Anyway, so that's like, she's sort of got that I'm not your average psychology client or whatever. I think a lot of stuff, and, some of it's probably not helpful, but hey, what can we do about that? So what did she say? I have a lot of insight. I don't know if that's the word she used though, because like it's all kind of a blur. Oh my god, my sense of self and all that. Like also filming Punk Rave Australia videos. Like I'm in a particular mode for that, and like it's not dishonest or anything. It's just like I'm in that mode, and then I finish the video, and then I'm editing it, and I'm just like, it's a weird experience at the moment trying to edit myself. Like, editing myself is always terrible. It's been terrible ever since, answering machines and like hearing my voice recorded when I was a kid. And then, like, even when I started doing music, it took me a while to get used to the sound of my own voice singing. But like, then with video, you're seeing yourself on camera. And yeah, like, while I'm in that video filming mode for Punk Rave Australia, and then And then like right now I'm sort of having that feeling like I'm speaking a particular way to the camera, and I'm just like, is this like, I later I'm gonna look at this and be like, yeah, okay. And so I've already had that about the session itself, is like, I remember being in there and saying the things and it's all genuine and so on, but as I've come out of it, you know, it's been a day and I'm just like, I do feel this disconnection, and it's frustrating. Like, why can't I just, why don't I have that proper continuity of my experience? Or I don't know, why is it so weird looking at past me or me in different situations? It's frustrating. Like, I know this is a normal thing, but for some reason I just interpret it as what the fuck. So yeah, that's annoying and difficult. And these is the issues that I've got to go through. What else? Oh yeah, so what I've said is she reacted a lot more reassuringly to my trickier issues than my GP did. So I brought in a piece of paper with like some of my issues, but I also showed her a screenshot of like what I showed my GP. So I did, oh my god, which side of the thing is it? I'll put a card up in the corner. About telling my doctor some of my issues, and my GP, when I told her some stuff, she was sort of like, she did not know how to react to it. I could tell like she was uncomfortable. Whereas with this psychologist, she was sort of like, oh yeah, okay. And, sort of saying like, some psychiatrists, they don't really deal with this stuff. They don't know much. So like she actually kind of knows that side of things. And yeah, it was just like, it was kind of reassuring to have someone not panic, I guess, because I guess that's something I'm kind of paranoid about, is like, if I tell people what really goes on in my head, are they going to freak out? Or, and I don't even know why I have that fear, because I used to talk about it all the time on YouTube and on Facebook quite openly, like, maybe 5 to 7 years ago. And like, that was fine and people were fine with it. So like, why am I having an issue with things now? Like, even in this video I'm avoiding the topic. I'm just like, oh yeah, guys, go watch that other video where I was much more candid. Fuck, my brain is just anyway. So other things that we talked about is like, I've got a lot of potential. So like, I was academically high achiever, but look at my life. I don't know what I'm doing. I feel stuck. I don't know where to go from here. So yeah, the word she used was potentiality, and I'm like, yeah, okay, we can use that word if we want. It sounds a bit over the top, but that's fine. And then, oh yeah, so like, talking about past treatment, and I mentioned like medication didn't work for me, because I'm sensitive to it. Like, great for some people, just not for my body. And I mentioned the thing about the Claritin, the antihistamines, and how I have to handle my hay fever with a half dose of kids' antihistamines. And so she sort of recognized that, like, I'm in tune with my body. Whereas I feel like if I had mentioned that to one of my past psychologists, she would have misinterpreted it as like some kind of anxiety thing. Like, oh, I'm so anxious about things that I'm misinterpreting things in my body, which is not the case. Like, I went into a lot of that stuff thinking, no, this will be fine. And then having the reaction, it's not anxiety, it's just how my body is. And, my last psychiatrist sort of recognized that, because I'm half Japanese. Maybe it's a liver thing, because, there are differences genetically between what you can tolerate. And maybe I just lost that lottery. So it's probably a good thing I've never been interested in alcohol, because my body probably would not process that well either. Anyway, so yeah, she sort of accepted that I'm in tune with my body and not just the anxiety thing. I didn't mention the word asexuality, but I did say I'm not interested in relationships. Like, I tried, it's just not for me. And she was like, yeah, okay. So, because, the psychologist I saw the longest, she asked me if I might actually be gay, and was not helpful when I was in a toxic relationship trying to get out of it. She said like, oh, at least you weren't bored. And I'm like, in hindsight, I'm like, that is not a good thing to tell someone who is in a bad situation and needs to get out of it, just because you want to confirm that I couldn't possibly be asexual. Like, just, Anyway, so this psychologist is like totally chill with the idea that I might not be interested in relationships, so that's a positive. And I wrote a whole song about my old psychologist, which I will also put up in one of the corners if you want to check out that song and the whole EP. Sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I don't really want to associate myself with the asexual community because it is just a bit too nuts for me, but every now and then issues come up and I'm like, yeah, no, that EP was justified. But anyway, no, back to the topic. So blah 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 blah, what else? Oh, when I mentioned music, like, so what do you do? And I mentioned the music thing, and also like having sort of lost interest in music. I haven't listened to much music in like the past 2 weeks. I think I only listened to my own songs because an Ace thing came up and I went on a bit of a rant on Facebook, and then I thought, I'm going to listen to my EP again. And then I listened to Rainbow Death Ray again and also AD Destroyer, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I did okay with music, but I just can't care so much. So yeah, I've been listening to podcasts while doing my work from home instead of music, and yeah, anyway, so that's part of the anhedonia thing, right? Oh, hello, Hopi. Are you coming up? Give us a moment. Sorry, I'm just not keen on talking about this stuff with the door open because I'm just in that state of what even. Yeah, so where was I? Oh, yeah, the music's anhedonia, blah, blah, blah. But I mentioned, like, having been in bands and being a vocalist, and mentioned also that I do the growling. And I thought, like, I'd just leave it like that. I think I made a passing comment, though, like, oh, but I chose the less popular growling method. And she's actually like, oh, tell me more about that. Like, she actually showed interest in the methods, and I'm like, okay, well, here's the simplest explanation because yeah, no, I wasn't expecting her to show any interest in that. I was just going to say, I growl, this is a thing I do, and then, move on to the next thing. So that was kind of interesting. And then, oh yeah, so after I handed over my sheet of paper, she, I swear to God, it was dot points. It was not like my rants that I go on Facebook. It was not like, my YouTube videos go for ages as well. It was just dot points. And she asked me, oh, and so are you a writer? And that one took me by surprise because I'm like, how can you tell from dot points that I might be a writer? But I guess probably most of the people she sees wouldn't have been organized to write those things, even in dot point form. And then, I don't know, was the language I used remarkable? I don't think so. God, sorry, let me just bring that up so I can check. Yeah, there are some psychology words, I guess, in there, things like, anhedonia, depression, dissociative feelings. I'd say those are the main things. But, like, does that indicate that I write? I don't know, maybe. I don't know, I was sort of impressed with that, like, when she said, oh, and so you're a writer. Like, I'm not really a writer, but I do write a lot, and I used to write fiction a long time ago, and just, I don't know, there was a point in my life where fiction just wasn't good enough anymore. I'm sort of frustrated with, like fiction and fantasy just makes me frustrated with how boring the real world is, and there's only so much escape you can do, right? So, yeah, anyway. Yeah, so those were some positive signs, I guess. Like, she seems open and accepting, and maybe it'll be more comfortable to talk to her than some of the others. I mean, this time I am making more of an effort to open up, but it is difficult because I do have these sort of defenses. And, like, I've noticed in a lot of these things, like, especially since my last depression, like, if I'm with my doctor, my GP, and then now with this psychologist, like, if I start talking about certain things, my face, like, I just start tearing up, and I'm like, I can think about exactly the same things on my own and not have that emotional reaction. And I don't even know if it's like emotions or if it's just like some weird defense mechanism when I'm there with someone else talking about something vulnerable and my body's just like, we're going to freak out now. And it's the weirdest feeling. Like, why am I reacting that way? Why am I showing signs of being upset when I don't entirely feel it? I don't know. Brains are weird and annoying, and yeah, like, socially I think I do just have this automatic defense system that kicks into gear and I have no control over it. So yeah, but if she's open and stuff, hopefully I'll be able to open myself up and maybe get to the bottom of some of my problems. Some other things I wrote on my Facebook post that are probably relevant is, like, so apart from being like a registered clinical psychologist. She's also into hypnosis, which I don't know a whole lot about. And there's a few different kinds. Like there's the dodgy stage hypnosis, but there's also like a more therapeutic one. And so I've been trying to read a bit more about that and watch some videos about it, people explaining things. And I'm not sure. I'm a little bit skeptical, but I'm trying to be open-minded because nothing else has worked. Standard psychology hasn't worked for me. Psychiatry medication hasn't worked for me. Psychology is very statistics-based. There's a chance that I don't fit into the normal statistics. There's always outliers. So yeah, maybe an alternative approach might be better for me. I'm just trying to stay open. So, and there is some evidence for some of the concepts in hypnosis, so I won't dismiss it outright, but I am a bit like, yeah, maybe not, we'll see. But I think the hypnosis thing might be part of why she's more open to some of the shit that goes on in my head, because, hypnosis does deal with a more odd idea about psychology, maybe, I don't know. And then she was telling me about, like, so there's like a dissociation theory of hypnosis, and I think because, when I'm talking about some of my issues, and now I have to be a bit more explicit, so, with the imaginary split personality is the way I like to say it, because that expresses what it is. It's bullshit, and I know it's bullshit, but that's the fastest way to explain it. But in psychological terminology, you'd say more like dissociative identity crap, and, I still don't know what to think about the diagnosis. Even with everything I go through, I'm still like, yeah, no, it still sounds like a bit of bullshit to me, but whatever. Using that terminology, right? So I mentioned one of my problems, one of the reasons I was never really keen at looking at dissociative disorders in general. There's a few of them, depersonalization, derealization, blah, 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 blah. One of the reasons I was not keen on looking at that is because of the association with trauma, and I don't think I've been through any trauma. The best you could try and do is be like, okay, yeah, I've got a disabled brother. All that would have kicked off when I was maybe 3.5, and that would have been a chaotic time. But trauma, I think it's a bit of a stretch. And so, I said I've sort of, like, I've known about but kind of avoided the whole dissociative thing, just because I don't think I have any trauma. Like, it implies that, and I don't think it fits. And so she was saying, well, there's this dissociation theory of hypnosis. I think really, like, what she was getting at was not exactly what I'm going through, because we didn't get into any details. I just said, this is the thing I experience. And I handed her the piece of paper that said that, because I could not, in the session, speak it out of my mouth. And on that piece of paper, it mentions that I'm very sensitive about it. So we didn't get into any details at this stage. It's funny, I can talk about it on YouTube sometimes, and I used to talk about it all the time. But now I'm in therapy, and I'm trying hard to be open, and I can't just be like, hey, here's a thing that goes on in my head. Yeah, I don't understand how this works. Anyway, so yeah, the dissociation theory of hypnosis is sort of like you get into, like, hypnosis is that relaxed state, and then you can have, like, your hypnotized self, but you also have this observer self, and so the hypnotized self is oblivious to a bunch of other stuff, like, if they're meant to be oblivious, or like they're in doing whatever the hypnosis-y thing is meant to do, but there's always this observant self that knows everything that's going on. And so, like, if hypnosis was going somewhere you didn't want it to, that could sort of jump in and be like, okay, we're done with this. I think that's the idea. And so, like, in that sense, with hypnosis, you can kind of dissociate parts of yourself. And so she was like, I think she was using that as an example of how dissociation doesn't necessarily have to be a trauma thing. But I do feel like it's different to what I experienced. Like, I have had, God, who's watched my channel for like 10 years? I know I've mentioned the different parts of me, like, especially at the time. I'm sorry to get confusing, because I wish I hadn't deleted so many videos. But, like, I had that conception of different parts of me, but I also had this conception of, like, an overall observer, and I think that is the more hypnosis-y thing. But, like, how do you explain the, compartmentalization of things? I'm sorry if I'm being confusing. It's confusing for me in my head. But anyway, so that's interesting. Maybe there's some other way to explain what's going on fucked up in my head. Um, yeah. But the other thing about the hypnosis that is good is like, of all the psychologists and psychiatrists I've seen, this one by far has the best couches. Like, they're so comfy. And I think that's part of the hypnosis thing is like, you've got to be relaxed and comfortable. So, yeah, they're the best couches I've ever experienced in therapy. So, if nothing else, I will get to sit on a very nice couch for an hour. Priorities, right? Anyway, so yeah, that's therapy. That's where I'm at. I've managed to say more than I thought I was going to, but I guess it's that same thing of like, before turning on the video, I was like, oh my god, there's no way I'm going to be able to explain anything. Once I turn the camera on, I'm like, yeah, hey guys, let's talk about a bunch of stuff. And it's just like jarring because I know when I turn off the camera, I'm going to be like, oh my god, I did the thing again, and just feeling very disconnected from it. Um, but yeah, no, so one thing I've been thinking about is just how long I've had some of these problems. Like, um, I've mentioned before the different ways that my sense of self is disconnected. So, the three main ways, two of them very normal, but perhaps exaggerated in my head. There's me in different roles. So, me as a YouTuber, me as a worker, me as just bumming around the house. Where we act different in different situations. But sometimes that just is super jarring for me to look at and be like, wow, I'm doing these things and it's not coherent. But anyway, the next one is me across time. And so at least since the age of 10, I remember like being like, wow, I'm so much smarter than I used to be. Like, past me was such an idiot. And then thinking the very same thing the next week. And like, there's been periods in my life where I'm like, well, yeah, no, that version of me and that version of me and that version of me, wow. So there's me going in the past, and like sometimes it just feels like there's some very distinct breaks between, yeah, versions of me across time. And then there is the more like stereotypical split personality thing where I feel like this is one version of me, and then sometimes there's another version of me. And like at the moment, I'm back to that proper like two-person split, right? But I remember talking on YouTube about more than that, especially like, in that first relationship. And I was just thinking about how I used to label it. So with me as the, like, I guess, original persona, like, I know it's weird watching DID channels because they have names for all of them. And I'm just like, yeah, I can't relate. But so, I basically split it into, like, I used labels. So M1, M2, M3. M1 is me just normally. M2 is, well, I never really referred to it as M2, but that's the destroyer thing, so I would refer to that just as D, which nowadays doesn't really seem like a good idea. And then M3 at the time, fucking wow. That was when I started dating, and it was just so out of character for me and such a jarring experience that I had to create a third persona to be able to date anyone. And like I remember the day that sort of split off, and it was a very strange experience. And I'm just like, how did I not look at that and think, gee, this is not how a normal person copes with life. This is not a healthy thing. Maybe I should get some help. How did I not? I mean, I guess I was in therapy, but I never said anything to my therapist because, well, the very first psychologist I saw, when I think what I said to her was sometimes I don't feel like myself. And she's like, oh, everyone feels like that. And it was the most invalidating thing for me as someone who was like, it was so hard just to say that. And then she's like, oh, everyone's like that. And I was just like, I can't tell this person anything. And I just was never able to tell any psychologist or anyone after that. Although my last depression, it was not an issue. I thought I'd grown out of it. So that's my excuse for that. But yeah, so when I was going, like that was before I tried dating, and so when I finally did go through that, and I had that whole third persona thing happen to me, it just never occurred to me to tell my psychologist, and I think I did see one, maybe not while I was dating, maybe a little bit into the relationship, especially like once I'd moved out and all the bullshit happened at their place, which I don't know if I've ever talked about, but yeah, no, I'm just like, how did I not see that as an unhealthy thing. Maybe it was because I was like, no, this is just me being philosophical and introspective. Like, this isn't actually a problem. This is just me coming up with theories and being imaginative. And maybe that's how I brushed it off. But I do kind of think, like, in hindsight, especially because I thought I grew out of it and then it came back and I'm like, how have I not grown out of this? Like, I think that's the moment that made me take it a bit more seriously, especially because now, like, I'm past the teenage hormones and the early 20s hormones. I'm over the world. Nothing means anything. So when I still have the same kinds of experiences, I'm like, oh shit, maybe that was real all along and I shouldn't have dismissed things. But yeah, no, that third persona though, it died out when I didn't need it anymore, and there's been no sign of that coming back. And so my theory is, so with the first relationship in particular, I think I even said it on camera and then deleted the video, so I don't know how many of you would have seen it, but I think that was actually the destroyer's idea because, you know, here's a guy who accepts her existence and yeah, I don't know if she figured that there was somewhere that was going to go for her, but it was like, well, I wasn't going to date him, so I feel like now thinking about it that she created that third persona so that we would date him and I would just not say anything about her or not resist it or something. And so yeah, when she disappeared, I didn't need that third persona anymore. It disappeared, and like I tried to stay in the relationship I was in and just put it down to depression, but I I mean, I think it had already been weakening after I escaped that first relationship, and I was like trying to cling to it. I think like maybe I was wrong about the asexual thing, maybe I do need to date, and I really tried, but it just not gone, don't feel any of it. And that last relationship, like, it stresses me out that no one ever broke up with me because I had to do that 3 times, and breaking up with someone is not fun because there's like emotions and stuff, and I should feel something but I kind of didn't, and I feel bad about not feeling anything. Although like with the last relationship in particular, especially because he was quite young, I thought there's no way this relationship's going to last. I'll just enjoy it for however long it is. And yeah, no, he ended up getting a lot more attached to me than I expected. And yeah, I had really hoped he would break up with me. But anyway, no, like, because all of them kind of saw through it at some point. They're like, you're not really into anything that I do. Like, you don't care about me. Like, they would point out something like that, and I would make some excuse, or the third me would make some excuse. I don't even remember. Like, you know, they kind of saw through it, but they also didn't. And it's just like a weird thing. And like, I'm thinking back to that and just being like, how did I not think that this was an unhealthy piece of my psychology, that like I was doing something so against what I feel, really, that I had to create a third persona, or some part of me had to create a third persona to convince me to go into a relationship. I mean, I do kind of think, am I just saying that because I'm in denial? Like, what if I do want a relationship? But then I'm like, no, I couldn't do it again. Oh my god. So I mean, that's the tricky thing, right? I always have to wonder if maybe that piece of me is still in there somewhere, but there's been no sign of it in the way that the other thing came back. So that's going to be an interesting thing if it comes up in therapy, which I should probably mention at some point, but it's just like, there's only so much you can get through in an hour, and then also I have to deal with these defenses that come up when I'm around people, which is why I needed to close my door to make this video. Even though I know there's a chance that family or whoever will watch this, I still, to make the video, I have to have the door closed. And if people in my real life realize what a fucking nut job I am, well, it doesn't matter because I fucked up my life anyway. That's what I'll tell myself so that I'll have the guts to post it online. Oh, why am I so fucking weird? Anyway, so yeah, that conception. And then, you know, M1, M2, M3, there was also like, I was sort of contemplating, do I also conceptualize an M0 as the observer, watching myself do all these things that's also kind of detached and is part of probably what that hypnosis-y theory might say. I don't know. But what weirds me out is like none of this feels like how people describe dissociative disorders. Not really. Like what people describe for various parts of it, it feels more extreme than what I experience. So I'm like, is that really what's going on in my head? I don't know. Um, yeah, so there's a lot to work through with what I'm going through. A lot of therapy, and I think it'll be interesting, and I really hope it fixes my life. So, like, I've just gone a whole, split personality ramble, but what I really need is just to, like, get back on track with my life. I started writing, so for my homework, I have to write about, what some of my goals for therapy are. And so the ones that I've got so far, like I think I was meant to write them as a stream of consciousness, but I couldn't think of anything. And it's only like while I've been working on other stuff that my brain's gone, hey, what about this idea? So what I've got so far is like, I want to find out who I am and what do I want, because I'm so like, I don't know anymore. I don't, I've said before, who collected all this junk? I want to get rid of it, but what if that version of me comes back? What if this is just anhedonia, and once the anhedonia goes, maybe I will care about all my stuff again? So I need to work out that. Who am I? What do I want? I don't know at the moment. I'm just floating, doing the same things I used to do, and it's just not living really. Anyway. Another one, how can I find and sustain motivation? Because I am super unmotivated. Like, I need deadlines to do things. I've mentioned that before. Punk Rave Australia videos are great because that's an external thing. Plants are doing all right because, especially right now, they don't stop growing just because I feel lazy. But apart from that, like, I have no motivation for my life. Like, what's the point of life? Like, why am I doing things? And I can't just sit around being a blob forever. Another one, how can I deal with / overcome the emptiness and disconnection in a healthy way? I want to find a way to get my life back on track in a sustainable way. So, like, I don't know, maybe have some kind of a career direction, or I don't fucking know. I just, like, where my life is very stagnant. My life's going nowhere. It's boring, and if this is all it is, I do see, like, if I get depressed, which is something I want to try and avoid getting depressed, but I feel like if I get depressed and I still have this kind of emptiness and, like, the world's not real and I've got nothing going on, I do worry that I would get back into a sort of more suicidal spiral and that it wouldn't end well this time. Like, I've never attempted before, but I feel like I'm a little bit in danger if that happens. So yeah, I want to get my life back on track, and I feel like it's a little bit urgent. And then I want to, the last one I've got for now is I want to trust my thinking enough to make decisions again. For example, about throwing out my old stuff, because right now I don't trust where my state of mind is. Like, am I going to be making a mistake throwing out that stuff? Is it just because of the empty sort of feeling? Like, I can't even feel upset about things properly unless I'm, like, in a therapy session or talking to my GP and my defenses go up. I can't actually feel upset about things. I'm just flat. I kind of feel like I don't feel anything, which I think is a lie, but yeah, I'm just in this weird space. So, I've got some goals, and if I think of some more, I'll write them down. I've still got, a few more days to figure that out before the next session. Yeah, I'm a mess. I've got a lot to work through. It's not just, so the reason I went through that list is just to say, like, it's not just the split personality obsession or whatever you want to call it. Like, I've got some real problems, and maybe you could call it some kind of a mild dissociation, like, feeling disconnected from the world. Like, when you read about that kind of stuff, people talk about, out of body experiences, or, watching things like they're on a film. I don't know that I feel it that way. I just have this weird sense that nothing's real, and I'm not real, and I don't know who I am, and, I remember my past, but I don't feel connected to it. Does that count as dissociation? It feels mild. So maybe there's something else that explains it better, but for now, that's how we're talking about it, I guess. But yeah, so there's that. There's just all these issues that I need to work through. And this video, impressingly, went on a lot longer than I expected I was going to be able to talk. But I guess that's, when you go on an autopilot thing, sometimes that's how I think of things. When I'm doing stuff, I go into an autopilot. Is that what I'm doing right now? Am I on autopilot talking to you guys? I don't know. I genuinely don't know, and I probably won't know until I turn off the video and start thinking about it, and then I'll be like, yes, that was definitely autopilot. I have no idea who I am or what I'm doing. So that's where I'm at. And next video should be a Punk Rave Australia video, and I got a little bit overexcited, and there are a handful of vlog-ish moments, and also my brain was jumping all over the place. I had to put little text things up just to clarify. And as I sit here, I'm just like, how did I do that? How do I keep doing these things? My brain makes no sense, and yeah. That's all I've got for now, guys. Say bye to your crazy vlog friend. Although, don't get all parasocial relationship on me. There's a few people who do that, and I'm just like, I don't actually know you, so keep that in mind. When I say friend, I mean like in the YouTube sense, and not in the actual friend sense, so yeah. Stuff and things.